In the year 2000, a young black geneticist named Dr. Rick Kittles, who at the time was teaching at Howard University, sent me a letter. He's now at the University of Chicago Medical School. And he said that he was asking various African-American men if they would submit themselves to this new test. And through this test, he could trace on your mother's line where in Africa you were from. Man, that was some serious stuff. And I said, yeah, I mean, I called him right away, and I said, definitely. And he said that of all the people he'd written to, nobody was writing him back. And I couldn't figure out why, but I later found out why. So I said, would you want me to come to Washington? He goes, no, I'll come up to Harvard Square. It's where I was living. So about a week later, he showed up. And now, I've had many operations. I broke my hip when I was playing football when I was about 14. It was misdiagnosed by a country doctor. So I've had a zillion operations on my leg, right? So I know about having blood extracted. If you could see my veins is, just look at a vial and blood pours out, right? I'm very easy to get my blood. Well, after half an hour, I realized that two things, that Dr. Rick Kittles is a brilliant geneticist, but he's not brilliant at extracting blood. I also realized why no other black male was stupid enough to let him come up to try to take their blood. Because that brother kept poking around, and I thought, damn, this Kunta Kinte stuff is hard work. How badly do I want to know where I'm from in Africa? But I really wanted to know. I'd wanted to know since I was 9 years old, so, you know, let's go for it. So finally, see, at the time, you had to extract a lot of DNA in order to run the test. Now, you just swab your cheek or spit in the test tube, depending on the company that you use. We could talk about that a little bit later. So it's very easy and it's very painless. So I waited and I waited and I waited. You know, Rick Kittles went back to Washington. I waited for the result. And I didn't hear from him. So finally, I called him. And you know how people do. He picked up the phone after I called him about 1 million times. He goes, oh, man, I was just about to return your phone call. I said, Rick, what's up, man? Where am I from? In Africa. Where are my people? You know, I want to jump on a plane and go. I thought I'd buy some land, you know, get a fine little African sister, you know, to hook up. I was single at the time, don't get me wrong. I'm still single. Well. So he said, well, we had to run, your results were anomalous. And we had to run them many times. But we finally have figured out where you're from. You are descended on your mother's side from the Nubian people. Now, all African-Americans, not all African-Americans, but many African-Americans want to be descended from one or two ethnic groups. Either the Zulu, because of Chaka Zulu, and the Zulu kicked the English in the behind in the Boer Wars, right? Until they finally were overcome. But you want to be Zulu, or you want to be Nubian. Who were the Nubians? The Nubians were the black pharaohs, right? The Nubians are in the Bible. The 25th dynasty was the Nubian dynasty. In Egyptian art, they always hated the Nubians. Nubians are always represented as darker. You know, they were warring kingdoms. And Nubia ran from what today's Khartoum, the capital of Sudan, up to the Aswan Dam, the second cataract in the Nile River. And so a Nubian, and all these people wanted to be Nubians, descended from the black pharaohs. So my friend Molefi Asante, you know, the founder of Afrocentricity, we argue a lot in public, but we're very good friends privately. I joke, every time he attacks me, I get a raise at Harvard, so it's cool. So I attack him, you know. We do what Malcolm and Martin couldn't do, you know. Set it up, and then we go split the money and slap five and go to Sylvia's, have fried chicken. Believe me, that's a much better way to function than hating each other. So I called Molefi first thing. I said, Molefi, I just got my results back. I am a Nubian. Where are you from? I am the true African prince. My friend Anthony Appiah, whose uncle was the Asantehene, the king of the Asante people. When Rick Kittle sent me a certificate announcing I was Nubian, Anthony Appiah looked at it and said, what a ton of rubbish. Now, why would he say that? Well, there's a slight problem with being either Zulu or Nubian, if you're African American. You know what the problem is? None of our ancestors who came here in slavery came from South Africa, the Zulu people, or from Nubia. None, zero. Egypt is over here. The slaves came from the area from Senegal down to Angola. 97% of the slaves came from that region, all right? So, you know how long it would take them to walk from Sudan to Senegal or to Angola? It just didn't happen. So I looked at Anthony and I said, "You're just jealous." Because I am a Nubian prince. I didn't care. I had it framed. I put it up in my living room so everybody could see that I was from royalty. So I didn't think about it. I thought maybe it was strange. Maybe it was on a trade route. You know, there were great Muslim trade routes. You know, today, this is important for the students. In my time, we were taught that the Africans were these benighted people, and they were too stupid to build a boat or to be curious about the world and cross the Sahara Desert. It was rubbish. Africans were just as curious as anybody else. The Sahara Desert was a highway. It wasn't a barrier. So I thought, well, and there were great trade routes. So I thought maybe my Nubian descendant had come over and ended up being tricked by some white man and ended up in Maryland or Virginia or something. So that was cool. And if I needed an interpretation, believe me, I could have produced one. So, and by the way, you know, the Zulu thing, when Oprah was finally in the first series, and we gave her DNA test, basically the next day she went to South Africa to announce that she was opening what became the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy. She was in an auditorium like 75,000 people or something, and she announced that she just had the test and that she was Zulu. So it broke on CNN. I was sitting in my living room minding my own business and said, "Oprah Winfrey's a Zulu." So I called Rick Kittles, and I said, "Rick, did you tell Oprah she was a Zulu?" He goes, "No, man, she made that up herself." It's a true story. It's a true story. I would lie to make you laugh, but I'm telling you a true story. So I said, "Rick, are you in your lab?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Is anybody there?" He said, "No." I said, "When the results come in, make her Zulu, man." You know? I said, "You back there making it up anyway." Don't nobody believe you could take some spit and figure out a tribe? What, are you crazy? So anyway, I was a Nubian and it was cool.